What's up, y'all? Welcome to episode Walter Payton of Shoe Booty Sports. That's episode 34 for you folks keeping up at home. And as I do that, I get my microphone cord caught up under the chair there. That's awesome. Fantastic start. But
Fantastic.
yeah, there was a NBA Finals Game 5 last night. We'll get to that in a moment. It was a kind of a big game. I don't know if any of you noticed, but quick plug for our sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, we are sponsored by Rhino Races. Rhino Races is the premier virtual race series. It's a virtual race series that offers 5 different races: a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and the Rhino Ultra, which is an ultra marathon like challenge unlike no other out there. Visit rhinoraces.com to register for one or all of those races. And also check out their gear section while you're there. They got t-shirts, decals, wristbands, and more. You can sign up today, register online, and run your race at your convenience. Track it with your fitness app. Take a screenshot of your results. Submit proof there of completion on the Rhino Races website, and they'll ship you your award by mail. Free shipping, by the way, on all races. So check that out today, rhinoraces.com. And Shoe Booty Sports, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, the Wisdom app. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can follow us on Twitter at Shoe Booty Sports. Send us all your hate mail, like our tweets, all that stuff. Hate tweets, I guess, not really hate mail. But okay, NBA Finals Game 5. Golden State goes up 3-2 in the series. And last night, Boston could not have had a worse start. Came out all kinds of flat to start the game. Of course, they were in San Francisco, but still, you would think Boston would play with a little more urgency than they did. But they did not. I think they were over. They missed their first 12 3-point shots. I don't think they made a three in the first half, actually. I'm not certain of that. But they came out and made like their first 8 in the second half. Had a huge third quarter. But yeah, they just couldn't keep that momentum going into the fourth. But they clearly made it a point to not let Steph beat them. Steph had an all-time performance, a series saving performance in game 4. It was basically Steph. It was all Steph. Klay didn't do much. Klay's been getting a lot of flack this series. I don't think it's necessarily him. He hasn't been lights out or anything special, but there's only one ball, and Steph is controlling the offense. The offense goes through Steph, and there's all kinds of playmakers. You got Wiggins. We'll get to him in a moment. Jordan Poole. You got a lot of different scoring options, but yeah, Klay made some big shots last night. Steph was over. It was his first game in like 230 something games where he hadn't hit a three. When's the last time you knew of Steph Curry not making a three in a game?
I couldn't tell you. I can't remember.
Exactly. This is Graham Powell, by the way, your host, along with co-host Bradley Brown, who just told you he couldn't tell you, and I couldn't either, other than it being 230 some odd games ago. But yeah, Steph was 0 for 7 from 3-point range. Now that had a lot to do with the way the Celtics were guarding him. Excuse me. They basically put two out, put one out just in his face, and then would help. The closer Steph got to the perimeter in the lane. Now Steph still found ways to make plays, but the Celtics made it clear we're not going to let Steph beat us tonight, because Steph beat them in game 4. Steph's the reason this is a series still. Well, now it's tilted in Golden State's favor. But that's the thing about the Warriors. One, they got a championship pedigree, but two, and here's one. I heard Jeff Van Gundy say this in game 4, because it was all Steph, and which Draymond has been just a complete non-factor. He played well last night for what he does. He did play well last night, but the 2 games before that, Draymond was a non-factor. He was almost better off the floor. There's a reason. Well, he was. There's a reason Kerr took him out in the fourth quarter of game 4. You heard about that, didn't you? I know you said you didn't watch much, but yeah, he had more fouls than he had meaningful stats. He did. He had 6 fouls and had no points, rebounds, assists, or steals over that total. So there you go. That was his contribution. So basically, Draymond was trash for 2 games, but played well last night. I mean, he made plays last night and looked like Draymond Green. Thing is that his own mom even said something about she couldn't recognize the person that was on the floor.
It was a clone. I think that's what she said. Could be a clone. So
possibly. A lot of people are kind of giving him flack on it, like, is he spending too much time podcasting and all that? And I'm like, well, he was still podcasting, but in the other games, prior to this series. But then again, Boston's the best team they've faced to this point, essentially. So I wouldn't chalk it up to that. I think that's an easy cop out. Like Draymond's podcast is on the Colin Cowherd, podcast network, The Volume. And of course I like Cowherd's podcast, so I listen to it. And of course, Cowherd is just immediately quick to defend that. Like, no, that's not the case. Cause he knows Draymond's making him rich. Of course he's going to say that. Yeah. But but Draymond did play well last night. Had a very Draymond game. And he was still very Draymond at times, especially toward the end of the game when it wasn't even a dust up. It looked worse than it was. I don't want to say dust up because of what Jack Del Rio said about the January 6th ordeal, but because that's apparently what he said. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah, I'm not touching that. But there was like a timeout called or something, and Tatum had the ball, or it was going to be the Warriors' ball, and Draymond was wanting the ball, and Tatum wouldn't give it to him. And I'm sure Draymond was being Draymond, so Tatum still didn't want to give it to him. And it looked worse than it was. It looked like Draymond was just kind of inciting something. But then watching it back, I was like, he didn't really do anything. He just stayed there and was like, kind of just like, hey, let me get the ball. It wasn't anything. I don't know what else was said, but that's what it looked like. So it really didn't look bad. But it helped to me that Draymond he played. He just played the game for the most part, rather than do what he did in, game 2, which basically just turned into heel wrestler. Was on the ground with somebody every other play, and was committing 34 fouls on one possession, but wouldn't get called for them, and just stuff like he cut out the antics for the most part. Like I said, he still did some Draymond stuff like that thing there, but I mean, compared to game 2, it was night and day. It's much. I don't know why Draymond just can't play. Hey, why does he have to just turn into that character, turn into the heel wrestler? Because it doesn't always. I understand that gives the team a bit of a boost, some juice at times. He's kind of the heartbeat of that team to an extent. It's Steph. Steph is the heart and soul of that team. But Draymond is the attitude. But that attitude has come back to bite him at times. And had they been in Boston and now I don't think Draymond would have acted like that in Boston if game 2 was in Boston. But it did work out in their favor that game, but I don't know. He played very poorly the next 2 games, but he came back last night. But the story has been Andrew Wiggins the last 2 games. Wiggins, I think, had 17 and 16, 17 points, 16 boards in game 4, and last night just lit it up. And then had the exclamation point with the drive and dunk at the end of the game. If Steph didn't have such a monster game-saving or series-saving game 4, I would say Wiggins is the MVP of the series at this point. But he threw his name in the hat too. But the Wiggins story is very intriguing to me. Like that, every time I see him, and I'm happy for him. I like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't really care who wins. But the story, I'm paying attention to the stories, and the kind of the more interesting stories are on the Warriors side, and the two most interesting ones are Klay and Wiggins. But Wiggins really sticks out to me. The number one overall pick in whatever year it was, 13, I believe it was 2013 or 14. No. I think it was 14. Yeah, because the Heat won it in 12 and 13 and lost it in 14. So it was 14. And yeah, Wiggins was the number one overall pick going to Cleveland. And of course, LeBron, this is when LeBron's coming back. I mean, it's like right as it's happening. And so we're thinking, oh, LeBron's going to play with Kyrie and Wiggins. No, LeBron steps into the GM role and ships off Wiggins for Kevin Love, which I didn't like the move then. I didn't even like it then, but I understood it.
Yeah.
I understood why they were like, no, we're in win now. We're in win now mode. And this was before everybody like really saw the Warriors coming like they did. Nobody saw the super team that they would become.
Nope.
I understood the win now move. I didn't like it, but because that was a lot to give up for Kevin Love, man. I mean, I know he padded stats in Minnesota.
But he's coming off an injury and all kinds of. Yeah, I didn't like it at the time either.
I just didn't think he was worth what all they were giving up for him. Well, he wasn't. But I really liked Wiggins. I really thought this guy could be a player. And he has become that player. I mean, he went to the perfect spot. I mean, he went to the best organization in basketball, a place where he doesn't have to be the guy. He doesn't have that alpha like not saying he's doesn't have that kind of game or anything. He doesn't have that alpha type of personality where he craves the ball all the time. He wants all the attention. He makes plays when the opportunity is there. And he lit it up last night. He had his best game, the signature game of his career last night, and played very well in game 4. But I remember one thing in particular when he got traded to Minnesota for Kevin Love in that big ordeal. And I remember him saying, he had a quote saying, "It's not meant for me." Like it wasn't meant for me. And I thought of him as Cleveland ended up winning it in 2016. Like, man, well, I wonder how he's feeling about this, That did cross my mind. I think it's very cool that Wiggins is about to get his, and he's shining in this moment. He's not just on the roster.
Yeah.
He is a major, if not the biggest or co-biggest contributor to the Warriors probably winning the series. I think last night won the series. I've gone ahead and I said Warriors in 6, and I stick to that. So I've obviously got them winning in Boston. But yeah, Wiggins to me is the biggest story because he's getting his. Like it wasn't meant for him then, but it's clearly meant for him now. So like the stars are aligning for this dude. He's a good dude. If you listen to his interviews and all that, he's very, a good interview, very chill kind of dude. And I don't know, it's just you can't help but be happy for him in a sense if you're just, a neutral, unless you're just a diehard Celtics fan. But I think it's very cool for Wiggins. The Klay stories, it's up there too, just considering you hear just all the talk. It's been 900 something days since he played, and he was just now figuring out, or just now basically running this time a year ago, like just running to get back into it. And he hasn't been the Klay of old, but I mean, I don't know that he'll ever be that again. But it's not like he's playing poorly, he's catching and shooting when he's getting the opportunity, and he's made some big shots. So I don't understand why people are kind of saying, well, where's Klay at and all that. It's like there's only one ball out there, It's like when the Heatles played. It's why isn't Chris Bosh doing what he did in Toronto? Well, because he's got LeBron and D Wade, and there's only one basketball. There's only so many touches you're gonna get.
The Heatles.
Yeah, the Heatles. So I know you haven't So we'll say this: do the Celtics have a shot? Do they have a shot in the series, or is it over? I think it's over. I think Warriors win next game. I think they close it out in Boston. I think the series is over.
I mean, I'd say they have a shot, but yeah, it's probably over.
Well, but this has
I've been
been
wrong
Boston.
before. I've been wrong this whole series. So,
well,
if
they've
I say the
had.
Warriors are going to win, the Celtics are going to win Game 6. So,
Well, they've played about 17 game sevens. It seems like just this postseason. That's obviously not a real number, but that's kind of it feels like they live in game 7, but it's game 6 coming up.
yeah, I don't think it's going to make it to Game 7.
I don't think it will. I think it was like the start of the game, the start of game 5. I think the Warriors smelled blood. And by that I mean they just could sense Boston just came out timid. They just came out kind of timid. Like the moment was a bit too big for them. Like they knew that they blew it, in game 4, or blew their opportunity to really take control of the series. Could have gone up 3-1. And yeah, Steph just willed them to win. And the Warriors jumped on that. I mean, just jumped on them. Jumped on them early. Boston stormed back in the second half, took the lead in the third quarter. I couldn't believe how quickly they took the lead in the third quarter. But, then the Warriors played like champions. Jeff Van Gundy said something. I think it was game 4. And I love Jeff Van Gundy. He says a lot of great stuff, but he said something about it's amazing how Steph is willing them to like a win to this win, or keeping them in this game with the Warriors' lack of offensive options or something like that. I'm like, and that's been kind of repeated by others as the series has progressed. I'm like, so what's Klay? What's Jordan Poole? What's Wiggins? I mean, those are some pretty good offensive options to me. I mean, the Celtics have some too, but they haven't been hitting. And Jaylen Brown, gosh, he played the worst game I've ever seen him play last night. And it wasn't just that his shot wasn't falling. He was just bad turnovers, just turnover after turnover, and bad turnovers too. I was almost to the point of thinking, get him out of the game. Like he's just killing you. And why would I? When else would I say that about Jaylen Brown? He's a heck of a player. But no, he killed him last night, man. That was the worst game I've ever seen him play. But then I think, then going over to Tatum's gotten a lot of flack. Tatum to me has been like a quarterback. He'll get a lot of credit when they're successful. Now, granted, he has a lot to do with that, but he gets a lot of the blame when they lose, when things don't go well. And now he took some bad shots last night, but a lot of it was his shot just wasn't falling. But that's Tatum. It's just I don't know, he's on one night and then he's off. I mean, he still found ways to get buckets and, distribute, but yeah, I think Tatum's gotten a little too much of the blame. I think he's been kind of anointed a superstar a little too early. I think he's 24 or something, or going to be 24. But I mean, the guy's going to be a star, if he's not already, but yeah, I don't see the Celtics getting it done in game 6. And if it somehow gets to game 7, I don't see them being able to beat them in San Francisco, beat the Warriors in San Francisco. So it sounds like we both got the Warriors winning it next game.
Correct.
Right on. So Finals MVP. I mean, it's gonna be Steph, right? Is it gonna be Steph no matter what happens unless Wiggins goes off? It's basically gonna be Wiggins or Steph.
Yeah, and unless Steph somehow scores 30 points over the next 2 games somehow, or over the net, or 15 points in the next game. Hell, I don't know. Yeah, he would have to have an off night and for him to stretch it to a game 7 and have another off night, but Wiggins pull through, and that'd be about the way Wiggins would get the MVP.
Well, Wiggins has been the story for me, but everybody's well aware Steph hasn't gotten his Finals MVP yet. But he was the MVP up until last night. But like I said, he didn't shoot well, but the Celtics had a lot to do with that too.
How many points did he finish with?
He was in double digits. I mean, it was like 13 or 16 or something. He still got to the line. He'd still hit some floaters in the lane. He still made shots. But he missed. He was 0 for 7 from 3. Yeah, he missed some that were wide open too. I mean, they weren't all contested, but I mean that's basketball. Even the greatest shooter in the world's gonna have an off night.
Sometimes they just ain't gonna fall.
Yeah, and that was the case last night. But Wiggins did everything right last night. I mean, he that was the best game he ever played, and obviously the exclamation point at the end. But Wiggins, man, he's just and he did that over Luka in the Dallas series too, which fortunately did not get called a charge. Now, the officiating, there were mistakes made on each end. Warriors benefited from a lot of calls last night, but it wasn't as egregious as like game 2 was, where everything was getting called in the Warriors' favor, especially when there just wasn't anything there. But there were a few of those moments last night, but for the most part, it was that wasn't the reason the Celtics lost. They just came out flat at the start and couldn't keep it together. Had the huge third quarter, but just couldn't keep it together. But yeah, and Jaylen Brown, like I said, Jaylen Brown could go off for. That's the thing. He can go off for 35 one night, but I never seen him play that poorly as he did last night. So, game 6, Warriors. We're gonna throw out a score. Or is it even like something you bother with in basketball? At least in professional basketball. We'll say margin. We'll go by margin. I think Warriors will win. I'm going to give them Warriors by 8.
By 8, I'll say by 3.
I think it'll be a close game, but then the Warriors will do enough and then get fouled and just do what they do, get to the line, hit shots, that kind of thing. So, yeah, Warriors in 6 over here, y'all. I did call that. So, I've called the last 2 Celtics series, assuming it happens. I mean, we're just basically giving it to the Warriors. But a lot of people seem to think this is. I will say this: a lot of people seem to think this is like an upset of some kind to an extent, which I didn't understand. You can see it at times when you see Boston play, how talented they can be or are and can be. But then they have those nights where they're not the same team. And I will say this, Marcus Smart needs to keep his composure in game 6. Like I know he was right to be upset when he got the tee. But you got to hold it together, man. You can't get teed up, not in that moment. And it didn't decide it, but it didn't help him out either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to say Warriors by 8. Steph gets his Finals MVP and 4th ring. Oh, I did have this in mind. You think how many more of these do you think the Warriors have in them? Championships, that is. Is this kind of this to an extent kind of feels like their last run?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They might have one more left in them, but with this group, like talking about with Klay and Draymond,
I mean the band. You know what
Yeah,
the band is
yeah, it's it.
with the BGs. Steph, Clay, Draymond. I mean, like this. That's the band. One,
Maybe one more.
yeah, they very well could. They very well could win another, but this almost feels like it's it for me, or like it's it. Like this is kind of the last ride type of thing. That's what it feels like. Boston could come back stronger. The Heat could come back healthy. Somebody else in the West will make a move. The Lakers can't be worse than they were. Um,
I hope not. Yeah,
yeah,
or I would hope not. Yeah,
yes, we'll come back around to this. We'll end on the Anthony Davis thing, not picking up the bat, not shooting a basketball since April. But
dude.
yeah, you just don't say it. Like I said, we'll come back to that. But my question was, I don't see how I glossed over this, but I mean, I got it written down right here. But yeah, this kind of feels like it's it for me or for them as far as another title run. But I mean, yeah, they could get another one in them. But the question was, will the Golden State front office ever break up the band? The band being Steph, Clay, and Draymond. They're always going to have pieces around, interchangeable pieces around. But do you think the front office will ever, break that crew up? I compared it to because this is the best front office in basketball, hands down.
Oh yeah,
It's a very smart front office. They draft well, they develop. I mean, all these players they gotten outside of Kevin Durant, they've drafted and developed. Jordan and Wiggins. Everybody thought Wiggins was done. That he's just a bust, and then Golden State picks him up. He just needed to be in the right system. He's a perfect fit for that system. So I mean, the Warriors get key pieces, draft well, develop well. I think that they're going to run these three for as long as they possibly can, and just continue to surround them with whatever pieces are necessary. Like when they drafted Steph, they knew what he was. They knew he wasn't going to be a great defender. So what do? They just surround him with some players that can defend, players that can shoot, and players that can defend. Klay, great shooter, elite defender when he's healthy. Even now, he's not defending poorly, but Klay is a fantastic elite defending guard when healthy. So surround him with a shooter that can defend, and then go get Draymond who can defend and do everything else. So I mean, the Warriors front office is just it amazes me how smart they are and how smart the moves they've made. And I think they've probably learned from Jerry Krause's dismantling of the Bulls of the '90s Bulls. That dynasty, which was essentially two dynasties. Jerry Krause broke up the band right after their third three-peat. And MJ on the Last Dance saying we wanted to run it back. I didn't want to retire. He wanted to run it back with the crew he had, but Krause wanted to break it up before the sixth one. He wanted to ship Scotty off. You don't do that. You don't do that. You roll with what got you there and what got you successful. Now, credit Krause for drafting Scottie Pippen and all that stuff and putting those teams together. But and the other moves he made, but he broke up that band way too early, and that's what sent Jordan off into the sunset earlier than he wanted to. He wanted to run it back. He's basically like, let them beat us. Like let somebody beat us before you break us up. Like it's one thing to break up the band when you lose. Like okay, all right, we can make some moves, but when you've won your sixth championship, third in a row, you stick with that. You stick, even though Utah was really was the favorite, and a lot of people thought they'd win it. Not me. me being a kid, I was like, Michael Jordan's got this. And he did. But I've gone back and I've watched game 6 of that too. And I'm like, wow, I don't know how Jordan did that. I mean, Pippen was limping around out there like an old man. He had his back was just killing him. Rodman was being Rodman, but it was basically Jordan, as far as the scoring option. And I think they even said like Pippen wouldn't have played game 7 had it gone to game 7. So, so advantage Utah. And Utah even had home court advantage, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that would have been a soul crushing childhood for me. Seeing Jordan lose a finals. But Jordan just made sure it never got to game 7. Smart on his part. That's the GOAT for you though, man. But I think Golden State will keep this. I think the front office will keep the band together for as long as they possibly can. Until Klay just is like, I just can't play anymore. My body can't handle it. Or Draymond has a season like he did the previous 2 games. Minus last night. Draymond played well last night, but games 3 and 4, he stunk. I mean, there's no polite way to put it. And yeah, I mean, Steve Kerr benched him. His future Hall of Fame player benched him, knowing Draymond is going to be Draymond and probably let everybody know about it, especially on his podcast. I have not listened to his podcast, but
I haven't either.
But it's very popular. But this is the podcast, y'all. This is the podcast to be listening to, Shoe Booty Sports. But I think Golden State will keep these 3 together for as long as they can and surround the pieces necessary to keep them successful for as long as they can. It's and I think Kerr will do everything he can to put them in the best position possible that he can as well. So I mean, he does right by Steph, giving him his ample rest during games and throughout, and has managed Klay well. I think they're in good shape. I think they could win another, but this kind of does feel like it's it. It feels like it to me. And if it is it, man, and they win another one, it's a heck of a ride, man. Four rings can't. It's a hell of a legacy that they've built, and a foundation they've laid. So shout out to them. And this will conclude part 1 of Shoe Booty Sports. Again, quick plug for our sponsor, Rhino Races, our very proud sponsor. Rhino Races is the premier virtual race series, y'all. It is a virtual race series that offers a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, a marathon, the Rhino Ultra. You can go online, go to their website, rhinoraces.com, register today, and sign up for your race. Run at your convenience. Track your run with your fitness app, submit your results. That easy, y'all. But this will conclude part 1. We'll be right back with part 2, y'all. Stay tuned.